Thank you everybody for joining us on the Black and White podcast with Steve and Kate. And we have another episode for you, and we're just going to get on with the conversation. And so, Kate, how's everything going with you?
It's going well, and it's to be said that it's a black and white perspective from a black young man, and older, mature white woman.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're covering the bases here. We're covering the bases for sure. And
If
so,
you've not been listening, this is who we are.
yes, very much so, unapologetically. And so, like how's sort of the week been? Because I feel like everything there's a new headline every single day that I wake up. And
And there's a new headline, even within the day, a couple new headlines of
yeah,
things that are happening that are going on as well. But you mentioned one this morning about the Aunt Jemima.
yeah,
So talk about that a little bit.
yeah.
And just so you know, that whole thing started in where I grew up.
Oh wow. So
Yeah.
so this
She was from
this
there.
is
No, I didn't. I read about it. I didn't know until somebody pointed it out. I was like, wow. I think she lived in Syracuse, New York.
Oh dang. Yeah, so that's it. I think it's crazy to think that like these are actual real people, and these real people actually live lives, and they're not just fantasy. You know, they're not fantasy. Like
Right.
they actually existed in lifetimes, like our lifetimes.
Right.
And so
So I don't know that I read the full article. So tell me what like they want to change this. The company's looking at changing this very long brand of theirs.
yeah,
Because of what's going on now.
yeah, and I think it's really sort of looking at where we're at and what the social landscape is, because when like it's like Aunt Jemima, Miss Buttersworth, Uncle Ben, the cream of wheat guy, like these are all like for mainstream America, these are sort of these post minstrel show sort of caricatures
Yeah.
that were being used to just sell products. And not only were they being used to sell products, but they weren't even being compensated. And so they're literally using black faces and black faces that reference racial stereotypes, and racist stereotypes to for white organizations to sell products. and
Right.
and and often you only see this with food. You only see this in this like bare basic subservient role where they're serving you. They're using their skills, they're cooking for you, they're taking care of you, but they don't have any real identity. And so growing up, it was always like, okay, like this is like my aunt or my uncle. Whenever I go over like my family's house, having family gatherings, like I should
Right.
trust them. As a black person, I should trust them because they are who I identify with, you know. But
Right.
when you peel the veil back and you understand the history of it and you understand how these people were actually treated, they were exploited, you know.
So from a white person's perspective, and again, I'm 61 years old, and I grew up, as I said in the earlier podcast, that I grew up with a father who was very prejudiced. But film and television was huge for me,
Yeah.
and as someone who has done independent stuff, films and television and stuff like that, it was a very marked and significant thing for me.
Yeah.
And again, coming from a white person's perspective, things that I've watched and seen all of my life, every, brand that you just mentioned has been a part of my world since growing up, and I'm 61. So it's very ingrained in our society, and not understanding the history of it. And again, the Aunt Jemima one, I read a week or two ago, and I didn't feel, at least when I remember reading the article, that it was this huge negative thing for the woman who is actually Aunt Jemima, who is
Yeah.
branded after her. So and when I worked in Chicago, it was an entirely black office of attorneys and coworkers. Um, and we started talking about reparations, you know, and what would be the thought of that. So as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, you're right. These people who were real people were taken in by white companies. And there is this stereotype that this subservient kind of role. But at least for me, as a white person, I never looked at that. I wasn't looking at the subservient role often. I was often amazed at the beauty of the person that I was experiencing in whatever arena that I was experiencing. So, for instance, the Aunt Jemima, concept works so well because she's beautiful. She's like typically like what Old South would call a mammy for sure.
Yeah.
And I get that that's like, okay, we're going back a long ways to have that be. But you do it is compelling. What I understand in those roles, it's very charming and loving and all of those things. So even I don't know if you ever heard, you're young, have you ever heard of Shirley Temple?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so I had someone that I saw, or someone even, I don't even remember who put it up on their Instagram, perhaps someone famous. And they put up about Shirley Temple, and oh my goodness, I'm going to have to Google the man who danced with her.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to Google it really quick because he danced with her. And she is the first white woman. The director, when it came to dancing with this man, who I'm sorry, I'm not recalling the name right off the top of my head. And she dances with his name is, oh yeah, Bill Bojangles. As soon as I see it, I remember.
Yeah.
So Bill Bojangles is a famous man who danced with Shirley Temple. And the director, when they were shooting this film, said that they couldn't hold hands. It was against not the law, but they didn't think it would be received well by the viewership.
Yeah.
And Shirley Temple, as a little girl, grabbed his hand and danced. And the number is incredible. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. It's lovely and beautiful and touching. And I've read her biography talking about Bill Bojangles and what an incredibly lovely, wonderful man he was. And so like these are the kind of earmarks that we have because Black America hasn't been represented on these mediums full extent, full out. But in the places that they are, there's an attachment for white America. There is an attachment. There's a fondness. There is a loyalty to, an appreciation of. So to dismantle that, is that necessary, or would it then be proper to consider reparations to those families of those people from those companies rather than dismantling? Would it be proper to consider, okay, what do we owe these families? Is there something we owe them? They've never been given any monies for these things. What is the thought with that?
Yeah, I think it's both, because not only you have to think about it from a social standpoint, right? Much like if the Shirley Temple holding Bojangles' hand is socially unacceptable, is a social is a byproduct of society. You also have to look at when these things were created, and the messaging and the thoughts behind them were also a byproduct of that society. A byproduct of a society that still was pushing forward segregation, was still pushing forward a lot of these things that saw African Americans, Black people, as subservient in and of themselves. When these things started, Black people didn't even have the right to vote. And so,
right.
And so you have to look at it in that context. And you have to
But do we dismantle it because back in that era, that was what it was? I even heard something they want to do something with Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
What is?
Yeah, I think
explain what they want to do with Gone with the Wind.
I mean, they right now they took it off, and what they're going to do is they're probably going to do some, do what Disney did with a lot of their racist cartoons, where they they either keep them on and they modify them so that they're more socially conscious, and you still have it, you still have the entertainment, but the you have the entertainment, but without as much of the racism.
Right.
And I think it's this sort of goes back to sort of the privilege that white communities have, because a lot of the stuff that like white people sort of adore and see as sort of cherishable to them, and like their and culture, American culture, is really damaging for other cultures, or for really damaging for other communities, especially black communities, people of color. And so when we're talking about dismantling these things, it's not dismantling them. It's really paying respects to other people that have lived here for generations. You know, for any person that is of Irish descent or Italian descent or whatever. I mean, black people have been here longer than they have. But when it comes to sort of the tenure that black people have, you know, that tenure is given to white immigrants rather than black people that stayed here as slaves. And so it's really sort of paying respects to the people that have died trying to fight for equality and equity, and really the people that have really pushed the envelope forward. And so when we're talking about sort of reparations and paying, yeah, I mean the company should pay, because even though they had the face of a black person that is more of like a palatable, or a mammy light, it's still a reference to a racial stereotype of black people being subservient.
And I so again, I hear that. I and I can, again, if you say my white privilege, I don't really understand the depths and the roots, the tentacles that are horrifically damaging. I don't know that those images, how they've been displayed in our culture, um, for a lot of white people, that it's demeaning, and it's how it's received from, like, me.
Yeah.
I never looked at it disrespectfully. I had value. I still looked at this representation. And it's something that is just within our culture.
Yeah.
And it's like, to say, okay, we're going to take that away. Whereas, could we now find an alternative to build them up respectfully, hailing them, paying them, and reposition it and holding it as respectfully, rather than, people were slaves, people didn't have the right to vote. Women didn't have the right to vote. So we can't go back we cannot go back right now. We cannot go back and change the history.
Yeah.
So are there things that need to be dismantled?
Well, yeah.
Are there things that belong in museums? Are there things that need to be eradicated? What are those things?
I mean,
and again, right now I feel like we're doing this huge pendulum swing, of course, and it's okay. It should be. I believe it should be. But where is the middle ground in all of this? Like 10 years from now, where are we going to be with this?
well,
And
I guess for this, as this train is always coming at the wrong times.
Oh,
But
yeah, of course.
but for this, has there ever been middle ground from the beginning?
But we can't change that there wasn't middle ground from the beginning.
Yeah.
Can we now bring
what
it
is
to
so if there was never middle ground from the beginning, and coming to middle ground, wouldn't coming to middle ground being respecting everybody?
Well, so here's my perspective. So let's say you were the woman who's Aunt Jemima, right?
Yeah.
And you are her great grandson,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're like, this is my grandmother, and this business has utilized my great grandmother for all these generations, and nothing was given to her.
Yeah.
So would it be something where you go back and the company looks at it and says, asks this family and has a sense of, what would you like us to do with this? Because we want to handle this respectfully to you and to your culture.
Yeah.
We can't change what it was. Do you want us to just dismantle it? Do you want us to somehow provide reparations for you and your family? Or do you want us to just destroy it and start all over again? Have that conversation with the people technically that they're connected to.
Well, so that ends up being two conversations, because you have one conversation about sort of the legacy of Aunt Jemima and
Right.
how it affects the family, but then you have the social construct. You have the social ramifications for representing using a mammy reference in and of itself, like that. Regardless of how you look at it, it's a mammy reference. It doesn't matter how you wrap a Confederate flag or a Nazi flag. It's still a Nazi flag and a Confederate flag, and so you can't redefine that. You can't redefine that history and that
But do
trauma.
you really think Aunt Jemima is like the Nazi flag or the Confederate flag? Do you
Well,
really think that that's what that is?
well,
Because I don't believe, and I wasn't there,
yeah.
but I don't believe that every woman who was ever a mammy.
Well, do you understand what the mammy is?
You tell me.
So the mammy is a racial stereotype. It's a racist stereotype that depicted essentially it came from like minstrel shows and stuff. And so a mammy was a overweight black woman with very dark skin that had red lips, and she spoke broken English, and her only role was to take care of the kids and feed you food.
So, so just so you know, I did know what that was.
Yeah.
And we, but so if we don't say just stereotype, I understand that and I'm challenging this
Yeah.
because that's a nanny too. Do you know what I'm saying? But I understand you're saying that this is a racial stereotype coming from this era, and they brought that forward into this product. I'm not stupid to that.
Yeah.
There's people who collect right now.
Mm-hmm.
Black America, I've seen, who collect ceramic representations of those eras, of mammies, they have whole collections. Whoopi Goldberg has spoke a lot about this. And so it's like, the Nazi flag, the Confederate flag, certain statues, again, we've talked about those going into museums rather than being monuments any longer.
Yeah.
This is history versus, glorification to this. So do we just have to shut it off and say, nope, put it in a museum, take it off? Or can we hail it respectfully, differently than where it came from originally? And now my dog's going to bark. Hold on. So answer that question. What can we do about that? Can we answer that question? Can we do this or not? Is that possible to try to do?
You can't respectfully show racism. That's just what it comes down to. I mean, it's a byproduct of racism
so
in
with
society.
Gone with the Wind, the woman who won the supporting Academy Award, her role in that was just a racist depiction, and so it should be not maintained as something that she did really wonderfully.
No, I mean that's two separate conversations, because we could.
But it doesn't. To me, it doesn't feel like two separate conversations.
The difference is that we live in a free market. You could buy Aunt Jemima off of eBay if somebody's going to sell it. But
right.
but in this landscape, in this time, why does Aunt Jemima have to be? Why does the company have to use Aunt Jemima to sell their products in stores right now?
Okay, and so the only answer I have for that, from again my perspective, and the deeper questions. Do the deeper questions have to be asked? I'm not disagreeing that the deeper questions have to be asked by the company and by our culture, but And if the majority says this is a racist product, a representation of our people, and we don't want it to continue to be maintained in the fashion that it is. We want it dismantled.
Yeah.
If Black America says nay, and but if the company goes to the family and says, we love this product, we have always held this as something respectful, whatever. I can't imagine that they wouldn't say that. Whether they meant it or not is another thing, but I can't imagine now that they wouldn't, and offer to include the family in this. And then other Black organizations, not just the family, but really invest into, the culture out of respect for what has been their brand for good God, how long?
Yeah. So that's again, that's two conversations. It's do you right the wrongs? Do you
How do you right the wrongs?
well,
That's the
it's
question.
so that's
How do you?
so that's so you I mean you said it. I mean you for the companies that are using these post menstrual references,
Right.
Uncle Ben's, Aunt
Right.
Jemima's, all those, they
Yeah.
they make efforts to make amends to black communities that they
Right.
have harmed by depicting black people in a particular way. And so you have initiatives to invest in black communities. You have initiatives to hire from black communities. You have initiatives to do all that stuff, and you pay respects to the legacy of and the people that these things were affecting. But on top of that, you have another conversation of this is the history and origin of where these references come from, and we now understand that these have racist undertones in it. And so
That
as a
definitely.
socially responsible company,
Yes.
you
Yes.
continue to use those racist depictions. You don't try to make it more palatable. You dismantle it in and of itself because it's racist. And regardless of,
Or
I mean, there's no or for it because it's racist, and so you can't make more racism more palatable because that is why people are upset right now. That's
so
why
here's
people are frustrated because you're trying to hold on to sort of the things that you cherish growing up, but a lot of the things that we all grew up with have racist undertones. I mean, and we have to confront that. And for black people, we've had to confront that every time we walk down an aisle and we see freaking mammies on our favorite pancake mix. But for white communities, they're able to take a step back or not even have to address the racial undertones for it because they just say, oh, it's a nice picture, she looks so elegant, all that stuff. It's like, but she's a mammy. And
okay. So
regardless of what you look at she's a mammy.
I hear that. So let me give. So here's what sometimes, and again, we've said in the previous podcast, we're having a really honest conversation. I know in white America, it's about I need to listen. I need to listen. I need to kind of be quiet and hear what Black America is saying. And I don't disagree with that. I am listening. I want you to hear
Yeah.
that I'm listening to you. And even whoever is listening to this podcast, what we agreed was that kind of walking on eggshells to really try to depict what questions come to our minds
Yeah.
when we have a discussion. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm not trying to offend anybody. These are questions that aren't even unusual questions.
Oh yeah, yeah, no.
In Black America kitchens, in Black America kitchens, is there racism against white America? What would you say?
I would say that you can't compare the two.
No, no, no. I'm just asking you a simple question
No,
because
yeah, like that that becomes like, who was better?
no, 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 no. It's acknowledging a truth.
Well,
It's
no,
not
it's
judging it.
there.
Listen,
So
it's
there's
not judging it. It's saying these reality, but this is what white America looks at too, going, blacks don't like us either.
well, it's
So
so what I would counter with you is, um, black people have a very real reason to be, um, to fear white people because they've seen videos, they've seen pictures, they've seen black people just trying to assert their rights and empower themselves, just to do the average thing that a white person does and takes for granted. And so over years and years of seeing institutions of white people in power doing things against black people have a very, very visceral sort of approach to white people. And is there prejudice? Is there discrimination? Yes. But in terms of when we're talking about racism between black communities to white communities and white communities to black communities, there's an institution and there's a power associated with it that black people just haven't had. Black people do not have a history of restricting white people from getting loans. Black people don't have a history of restricting white people from buying land in particular places. Black people don't have a history of restricting white people from living in certain places. Black people just have not had the power to be racist in that manner. And so
Right.
it's when when I always hear like, oh yeah, there's black people are racist to white people, it's like that's being misinformed, because you're not contextualizing what you're saying, and you're not understanding what those words actually mean when you say them, because you can't compare the two. It's like saying that like a Chihuahua, like a Chihuahua and a pit bull. We have a Chihuahua that just barks a lot and it will nip at your leg and stuff, and it's just annoying, right? But if we have a pit bull that will bite you on the leg and is barking, people respond to that differently than a Chihuahua. They'll put down a pit bull. They'll just kick the Chihuahua around. And so you can't compare the two. For a white person to try to compare the two is very disingenuous, because they don't understand the landscape that like white people, the majority of white people that are alive today were born with the right to vote, men and women. The majority of black people that are alive today were not born with the right to vote. And so until we reckon with that reality, you can't say that you can't say that prejudice and discrimination from black communities to white communities is comparable to
Okay. So
the same with the white communities to
I'm
black communities.
oh, and I really appreciate what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, and I just I'm not looking at that black people have discriminated against white people, for sure. I'm talking about that within every culture, there is their own prejudice against another
Yeah,
culture.
yeah. But
That's
is that
that's so I'm not talking about, so racism, when I say there's racism, you're I guess there's layers of it. And you're talking about the ardent, absolute, you know, what has happened within the black community. And you don't want that to be kind of diminished. And in what I'm trying to at least attempt to try to talk about isn't to diminish that reality that you just so eloquently spoke to.
yeah.
I'm trying to talk about, I guess there's a part of me is like, how can we productively really deal with all this stuff? Like, can we really, like, so for instance, I'll go to another arena. Can we really just dismantle the police? So like we're talking in like extremes, but what we're really wanting is change and awareness and dignity
Yeah.
restored. That's what the goal is to get to.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking, going, how do we get that achieved without just using the card, you're a racist, or that's just racist, or this is, or you're, I don't know, like, get over it, black people, like, how to stop saying those things, and how can we really have a productive shift to where all sides are in a sense of shift and change and
Yeah. It's
significant,
I
powerful.
I think that and I think we're seeing the pendulum finally shift the other way, away from
Yes.
white power and white supremacy, to
Yes.
sort of including everybody. we're seeing the pendulum shift, and through that shift, we're seeing the pushback of you know you know for white people, they see the Aunt Jemima thing and they say, oh, they're trying to take away what I grew up on. They're trying to take
No,
away our
well,
culture. They're trying to take away our culture. I mean, that's just what that's
okay, so you just put, so I feel like you just put that on me, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, yes, it's been a brand that's been around and even beloved.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's
not
culture.
okay, but what I'm saying is, as a company, is the only answer to the question or to the now recognizable reality is to just dismantle. Like, you can no longer use these stereotypes. Get rid of them. That's
Well,
it.
why
And
would
I'm
you?
asking a question. I'm not saying to keep it up, because this is an opportunity to, can it be an opportunity with America understanding what who these brands are behind, what the faces behind these brands, and hail them respectfully, and then have that company respectfully perhaps keep those branded faces. But the shift then changes with what the company does with the monies and what is owed and what it's now committed to uh, giving to Black America
Yeah, so I think
because of the usage of that, and then hail those people who are those representatives of those companies significantly, rather than just take it away. And look, if they take it away, like, that's fine. I don't care about the
yeah.
company of Aunt Jemima. That's not what I care about. I'm caring about how can this happen? How does this happen? What could be good alternatives? Because a pendulum swing always immediately goes to the other side. It just does.
Yeah,
And then it finds this middle ground.
but over time it finds that middle ground just naturally.
Right.
And so I think it all goes back to privilege, where you regardless of, and I guess this is a comparable thing with like not like Nazis and the Jewish community and German community and German culture, where regardless of how you try to uh, pay respects to it and make it palatable, it's still what it is, and so for white communities that are looking at this and say, is there another way? Does it have to be dismantled? It's like, the reason is up because it's racist, and it's a byproduct of a racist time. And so
So
as you sort of as we become a society that's less racist, uh, you want to dismantle a lot of the racist things that came from that racist time. And to you could put it in a museum, you could do all that stuff. I mean, it still exists in terms of like the fabric that we have. But why is it that Circuit City could go out of business? Why is it that Blockbuster could go out of business, but things that are racially insensitive have to stay because they resonate with a particular community?
so I'm just thinking of something. I'm trying to find a correlation in my mind. And as I think I didn't even finish what I was saying earlier, as far as like, we've agreed that we weren't going to walk on eggshells, but
Yeah,
there's ultimate respect on both sides, for
yeah,
sure, to both cultures. And we both came into this agreeing that we didn't even have, the goal was to have an honest conversation.
yeah.
Just, I'm reiterating how important that is. So I'm not walking on eggshells. Even if I sound stupid, I'm okay.
Well, no,
It's
I
like, I
mean,
don't mean to be.
yeah, like
I'm learning, and I'm asking. I know that these questions are being asked privately behind
oh,
closed
they're not
doors,
even
and
being asked privately. I mean, like these are questions that these are questions that are
there people are not understanding. And I'm trying to, at least from my perspective, try to get why this would be a thing, right?
yeah.
So within the Jewish culture, through the war, World War II,
Mm-hmm.
the propaganda was, if you were a Jew, you looked this way,
Yeah.
your nose, your teeth, your face, it was all these ugly pictures, and
Yep.
that's a media tool to this day. If you want somebody to agree with you and you're on the other side of it, put a mean picture of them up, and people
Yeah.
go like, oh, you look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is a perfect example. He doesn't always look like, this weird, angry asshole, but there's charming pictures of him, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
you're not going to put that up if you want to make a negative point. So with Jews in World War II and the propaganda,
Mm-hmm.
they depicted Jews this way. They even put pictures up saying this is what a Jew looks like, and it was this depiction.
Yeah.
And so those are in museums at this point. I think the opposite of, so what you're saying is that's what is happening within the Black culture, and that's what this represented. And here's probably the difference, at least for me, again, and it goes back to this subservient, it's like I look at those photos and pictures and depictions and find them charming, loving, sweet.
Yes. But those
and
are how white people feel about mammies.
and 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 I don't, and like Bilbo Jangles, like
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm thinking, why take away that's beloved, that's not depicted like that? Lies the picture difference in my brain. Like if this was a company that used something disgusting, and slavery was disgusting. Slavery was disgusting. And if you're saying that's what that represents, slavery, even if it's a pretty picture, it's slavery where we were brutalized and
Yeah.
murdered and mistreated.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's post slavery, so it's literally it's post slavery. It's Jim Crow and it's segregation. Where not only where people weren't in shackles, they were just getting beat up on the street by police. They were getting lynched. They were getting all these things, and then when you did see a black person, they couldn't touch it. They couldn't touch a white person. All they could do was entertain, cook, clean, and entertain. And provide for. And so the things that white America enjoyed from seeing Aunt Jemima and all those are reminiscent of how what black people did for them to entertain them and feed them. But for black people, when we look at that stuff, that brings back that harsh reality, that history of these are what these people had to do on behalf of white people.
So are you telling me, and again, I work in trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and so are you saying, and I'm asking you to really, not politically, not within the era, not with what's this depiction of time right now.
Yeah.
When you, as a young black man, little boy, when you would go to the store, and if you saw Aunt Jemima or any of these depictions, how did you, like, as a little boy, how did you feel about that when you saw that? Can you remember?
If
it's just like, did you like it or did you not like it? Like,
well, no,
and
it was something that was tied to the product, and so it was recognizable, and I liked it because I liked syrup, and I liked Miss Buttersworth. I like that.
So here's I'm asking for the short answer.
Yeah.
Because that is what I guess what I'm talking about, and I'm going to the future now too. But
yeah.
So it was designed to do that. You see this beautiful, lovely face and this beautiful, lovely product, tasted good, and it represented something sweet and a good memory.
Yeah.
And and now as an adult, you look back and go, well, this is what it represents. And I'm thinking, so people get triggered by things that really have harmed them, and they go deep back in time. It goes from when you're a little child. And when you get upset about something, it's usually triggered from something that hurt you when you were little, even unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
So the expression that you have now about what this depicts versus how you felt about it as a child, you weren't offended or hurt. You just liked the product, and you like, this lovely person, his face was on it as well. Yeah. So that's where I think my wonderment is, how do we have to just take it all away?
Well, I
because
think
of
that
what it now represents in the ethos of this time, and really trying to look at um, uh, racism and
yeah,
the systemic reality that we're now questioning and looking at and discussing.
yeah, I think it you have to I think there's black people do not have the privilege to learn about their history and look past Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben and what they represented and what they were meant to represent from the beginning.
What they were meant to represent was love, care, kindness, gentleness, ability to give you something that's wonderful. That's what I believe that was meant to represent. And they
But we
took a
also
stereotype, and they did
yes,
take a
they did
stereotype.
take a stereotype
They totally took a
and they
stereotype of
commercialized it.
someone. And yet what I'm saying is they were depicting something that was a stereotype that was loving and kind and sweet and able, and you could depend on, and you trusted, and you would love what you were eating based on, and that's who they chose to have you trust with that. And again, my question is, do we just take all of that away? Even if there was good intentions, they didn't pay somebody. Look at back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. The Brady Bunch kids get nothing. They don't have monies coming to them anymore, I don't believe. And if they do, there's plenty of television shows where people, their images have been used. They signed a contract, and they get no monies ever from doing those shows. So the image was agreed upon somewhere along the line with every person. So I don't know the history if, like, for Aunt Jemima, and again, I read this thing and then it
Well,
just came up again.
it's different. You can't compare the Brady Bunch because Brady Bunch was not a racist stereotype that they were trying to recreate or refashion. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what approach you take it. It's a racist stereotype that was commercialized. And you obviously you can't get rid of the history of it, but you also have to understand that it's a racist stereotype that was commercialized. And so it's racist. I mean, like that's just it's point blank from there. Like, and so moving forward, it's like, okay, try to right your wrongs, but moving forward, no, you don't want to continue using a racist stereotype when everybody knows that it's a racist stereotype. It's there's so many other things that you can do right now. Literally.
So it is it and so again, I said last week too, these are for me to understand. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to listen to you. This is a racist stereotype, even if I don't fully agree,
Yeah.
but I have to. So I'm willing to go, okay, this is how it's felt within your community.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at objective truths here. Aunt Jemima, a mammy, that's a racist stereotype. I mean, like, that is literally just, that is objective. Then the subjectivity comes in. How do you respond when you see that racist stereotype? That's where the subjectivity comes in. And that's where
so if it's acknowledged that it was that, if you're saying, you're saying this is objective, this is a racist stereotype that they depicted, she may have even signed off on it, but it's nonetheless, this is what it is.
I mean, there were black people in a lot of the minstrel shows, because they wanted those are the only opportunities that were available. There's black people in a lot of racist stuff.
Right. Like, listen, I watched Star Trek when I was a kid growing up, the original, right? And Nichelle Nichols, who played Lahura, was an amazing character, right?
Yeah.
And she wanted to leave the show at a certain point.
Yeah.
And you may have heard this story, but Martin Luther King contacted her. And he was like, please don't leave. You know, you are one of the only faces of our people
Yeah.
on the show, on a show that shows, you know, like she kissed William Shatner, you know,
Yeah, I
her.
mean,
Uh,
like with her work, I mean, everything that she did that broke barriers.
completely.
But we're seeing
These
that
other
in,
things you're saying aren't breaking barriers.
well,
Yeah.
I'm saying that this is when we have when this is when we look at the agency of Black people, when we have the actual opportunity to make choices for things like minstrel shows and mammies and all that stuff. Black people were not included in the conversations for these for the way we were depicted. And so when you reference that, that's agency and autonomy for Black people to control the way they're depicted. It's like, you know, the company, these are these are white companies.
Right.
They're white companies, and so they're white companies with the racist stereotype as a brand image. And so you can't sit here and say that, you know, there wasn't any intentions, you know, any malintentions for it, because they could have used a white person. They could have used, you know, like they could have used so many other things, but they chose this specifically because it catered to a specific time period, and it catered to a specific population that saw Black people in that way. And when they saw that image, they understood the context in which they were being shown that image. And it's all because it's a byproduct of racism, you know. And so to look past all that and not acknowledge any of that, and then continue it and try to find ways to make it more palatable than it already is, I mean, that just further pushes, you know, that further ingrains the racism, you know, because you're taking a racist stereotype and you're just making it more and more subtle so that it goes over people's heads, and so they don't know that they're participating and they're accepting racism for what it is at face value, you know. And that's, you know.
Okay, so you just said something that's really, really important to what we're talking about. I mean, everything you've said is really important to what we're talking about. But again, sometimes it's about what goes click inside somebody. I've been talking with you, talking with you, talking with you, and I want to better understand. And not until you just said this one word did it go click. And the one word is the subtlety. It's the subtlety
Yeah.
of what is it saying. And we're ignoring all the underlying layers of pain by allowing these images to be continued as a brand
Yeah.
in these times, because it still communicates very subtly that, and it's different almost than propaganda, but I guess it is propaganda, but it's
it's
in the
it's the
subtlety.
power of marketing.
I know, but here's what I love when you said that, because look, I'm not someone who, if you're in my face like this, like if you're really screaming at me, I am not gonna listen. Like I have no
Yeah.
interest in listening to that much. It's just too much.
Yeah.
So the subtlety, it's the subtle, unaware. You don't even know that that's kind of what's happening, and you're accepting this. You're not appreciating the pain behind the smiles of those faces, of
Yeah.
what it's representing. You're not understanding that though you feel beloved towards this brand as its depiction, you're not participating in the injustices of, and it's subtly allowing you to be attached to one thing rather than caring about the other.
Yeah.
Even if you don't intentionally do that. I wasn't intentionally participating. I didn't think I was,
Yeah.
but it is subtle. It's
Yeah.
in the very, that's the word. That's And that is then insidious,
Yeah, it's
leaving you unwilling to shift. If you want something to stay the same, um, even though well intentioned, and I say you, me, whoever, it's like why are you attached to that? But I was trying to understand it. I was like, I didn't get it. I don't like. Can't we do this a different way? But when you said subtlety, that just went right through me, and I'm like, okay, it's the subtle messages that you don't even have to ask yourself.
yeah. And I think that sort of approaching it from that standpoint does create a more impactful definition for the concept of white privilege, because when we're talking about it, it's you have the privilege of not acknowledging the subtleties that society has, uh, in propelling racism, you know, and by acknowledging the subtleties, you're confronting that privilege of not having to see it.
Well, and again, this is not something that anyone is doing on a cognitive level, on a
Oh yeah,
conscious
no,
level.
no. I mean,
And so what the right, the subtlety is, you know, yeah,
yeah. I
that's
mean,
it.
like the literally like the definition of privilege is you don't know that you have it until you're forced to confront it.
Well, and again, we talked a lot about that last week, and I heard different people talking about white privilege, and even as you say it, sometimes I still get a little like,
Yeah.
can't we use it?
I
I
mean,
know.
after once you hear it like three, once you hear it 100 times, then
No,
it doesn't sting as bad, you know.
no, and it's like because because once we start to have a conversation,
Yeah.
like I do try to find different words. Subtlety was the word that did it for me. No matter what you were saying, suddenly it was subtlety
Yeah.
that went, it hit the nose on the head. It was like ding ding ding, and it just went through me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think, sometimes when people are trying to think of a different way to say white privilege, how can we make it so that it goes through people in
Yeah.
an effective way?
Yeah.
It's been asinine in some ways, and I probably participated in that to some degree, but it's like it's like, so my question is, and again, with this pendulum swing, I actually said to a friend of mine on the phone the other day when we were having like, I have a lot of people who think that they want to have a they don't even want to have a conversation. They're like, oh God, let's just stop this. What is, like, come on,
Yeah.
Or when you start to have a conversation, look, I'm someone that pushes people to think differently. And they're like, oh good God, I just want to get off the phone. They're not even saying that. They're just like,
Yeah.
I just want to get off the phone. It's, come on, whatever, like, so in this conversation with my best friend, I said to her, I know people feel that way at times when they ask me questions and then I respond and they don't like it. And we try to have a discussion and then they kind of throw it over as if it's me who's been the problem in the conversation. And I said, that's white privilege. That's what I've been told. And that's what I now understand to
Yeah.
be. You get to do that.
Yeah.
You get to be like, oh God, I'm so sick of this conversation. I just want to get off the phone. I don't know what to do about this. I can't even, people are going to jump down my throat. I don't know what to do. When you try to do something, so it's that kind of conversation. And it made her stay in the conversation longer. It really did.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast, and as I'm talking about it, and I then say things that you've said to me, people are listening and going, well, how did it go? What happened?
Yeah.
And when they get like tired of it, I go, and that's the point. You get to get tired of it, have your thoughts, don't have to change, and you get to go home and turn the TV on and shut your door and go to work the next day and don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Or you're tired about it. We've had a difficult conversation, a challenging one.
Yeah. It's
you know?
I think I think about this like a construction worker that is is the breadwinner. If when they're tired after dealing with all this stuff, and they start their 8-hour shift or 12-hour shift, and they could barely stand, or they're done with this at hour 2, they still got 8 to 10 more hours left of dealing with this. And if they
Well,
don't, then they can't bring home money to take care of their family. And
so, and I guess this is where I sometimes, when you say white privilege, and people who look, I I remember when I was like 5 years old and I was in my room and I was like, how did I wind up here? Like I remember touching the wall, like, how did I wind up here? It was
yeah,
very surreal, right? But look, I was born here. You were born where you are. You're born in Africa, Asia, all Europe. Like how, and then there's people who are born into money, who are poor, dirt
yeah,
poor, So like how did, and so, when you say white privilege, I think I was a single mother with 3 children
mm-hmm,
and I had no money
yeah,
when I found out that my partner, my husband, who was having an illicit affair, and we were within a Christian world, and had no money because he, ministry wise.
yeah,
And I literally drove from one coast to the Midwest, with 3 little kids. And look, I had $300 cash. That's it. My car, no credit card, no phone, with 3 little kids. My
yeah,
youngest was a year. And I remember stopping at my brother's and he was like, do you have a card? I was like, no. He was like, did he check your oil? I was like, nah, I'm fine. Like, and I had zero. Like, that was it. No
yeah,
money. So like, I have had to endure. Like when my children who have children now, or before they even got pregnant and having difficult lives, I was like, now put 3 kids in that mix. And they're like, oh God,
yeah,
no way. Like, come on. So you're saying, so this is where, like, yes, I had to do this no matter what. I had to figure it out. And
yeah, and we
it was
all do.
good. It was bad. We all do. And I said, that's sometimes where, when somebody says white privilege to me and I'm like, dude, you have no idea my life. Like,
Well,
and
it's
I
so you'll
and
notice
I
that.
couldn't get out of it. I didn't have a choice to get out of
Yeah.
it either.
Well, you'll notice
I
that a lot of the stuff that you said dealt with you having or doing something, right? And so it's
What do
like
you
you
mean?
didn't you had kids, you didn't have money, you were driving, you did these things. There was never when we're talking about white privilege, it's not about what you have or what you do. It's about you existing. It's
And if I was black, the realities of what I would have to deal in the very same
yeah.
situation
Those
would be totally different if
yes,
I was a
yes,
black woman in the exact same position.
yes,
And even if I'm a white woman with all those difficulties, I still have it better than a woman of color, black woman, who has 3 kids traveling across the country. She doesn't have to deal
yeah,
with
and going
what
to
if
the
a cop pulls
Midwest.
her over. And going to the Midwest, you don't have to think about hotels. You can't stay with your kids, then all of that
So
stuff.
it changes the context of it.
Yes.
It's like yeah, it just changes the context of it. And so it's like I mentioned before, like it's not when somebody mentions white privilege, don't take it personal, because it's not something that you can control, much like we can't control being black. But it's acknowledging that giving a situation, because you're black, you will have a different experience than if you were a white person.
Right.
If you were a black person, super dark with coily kinky hair,
Right.
you know, people are literally going to treat you differently than if you look like a blonde white lady.
Right.
And so you have to confront that, and you have to say that exists because we live in a society that is has these so subtle, deep-rooted racist tendencies that it treats people differently just at face value. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to have anything, or they can have anything and everything. But because of the color of their skin, they will be treated differently. And we see
Right.
and we see that,
Absolutely.
we see that
Yes.
with black doctors that are getting pulled over, and
Yo,
you
definitely.
know, black law enforcement that gets, you know, that are subject to police brutality. Like it's because the root of it is that that's not going to happen to a white person, you know, and if it
Well,
does happen to a white person, it's very very unlikely compared to
right.
if it happens to a black person. And
It is not it's the exception to the rule for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I mean, you know, I and there's times when I go, is this a class difference? There is a class difference as well. And is
yeah.
there,
Oh yeah, I
but
mean, like there's class differences. I mean, we could talk about just able bodied and disabled. I mean, like you like able bodied and disabled is one of those overlooked categories as well. But even within that community, there's a racial component of, you know, a able bodied person that's white is going to be treated differently than an able bodied black person that's black.
so
And
what do you think of, um, because there's disparities, there's no question.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you just throw that, like I would say to my kids when they were having a hard time, I'm like, throw three kids into the mix now. So
hmm
you're like, well, Kate, throw being black into that mix.
yeah. hmm
And how would it be? It's the
And I
same
think
kind
that
of.
there's data that actually shows the racial disparities
Oh,
across any.
they've done videos where it's a black child and a white child who's poor, white child, like they've
Yeah.
done
Well, yeah,
videos
we
to
actually have
show
data. Yeah, you know, if
data
we
of
talk about
how
if we talk
people
about
treat it
job
differently.
opportunities, black people are at the bottom. If we talk about health disparities, black people are at the bottom. If we talk about education, it's black and brown people. I think because of the immigrant population that's coming over for Hispanics, that sort of changed it a little bit. But black people are still at the bottom. You know, when we're talking about illiteracy rates, black people are at the bottom. When we're talking about all these different things, tech, black people are at the bottom. You know, like it's all the numbers are there, you know, and the numbers are there, you know, where if we look at, you know, two people, that one black one white, that grow up in the same environment with the same amount of resources, with the same drive and work ethic, with the same degrees, the white person is most likely to end up on top and the black person is not. Like
So how do we, you know, like, how do you see us moving forward? Because, so again, the pendulum and what's going to be depicted on the media is going to be, and I don't look at a lot of media, quite
mm-hmm.
frankly. I
Yeah.
I really don't. I do internet stuff. So I don't do CNN, MSNBC. I'll get the blurbs because I have no interest in supporting what I think at times is just an agenda.
Yeah.
So, but I do see, like, so what do we do? When I went and protested, it's like, okay, what's the next steps? Like, what do you think? Where do you think we're going? What is
Yeah.
it that now that as the pendulum is going to swing? And I actually even said to my friend, so you tell me if I'm incorrect on this. I think it's going to be angry, dominant, unpleasant, to try to almost to dominate for a while.
Well,
And
there isn't going to be domination because that just
well,
isn't
listen, if
possible.
some white person publicly now says anything negative and about any black person, black anything isn't supportive, they're going to lose.
Yeah,
So
and they
that's
deserve to.
dominating. Okay, so I'm just addressing
But
that
that
you just stated that that's not dominating. That's called dominating.
oh no,
That's dominating.
that's the free market at play.
No, I understand that, but it is a focused effort. There is a domination reality that's coming into play here right now. It's taking what's happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that is that's that's not contextualizing what domination means, because when if some influencer or white person were to go on a national platform and try to disparage the black community, they in this
I'm not
climate.
even talking about disparage. I'm talking about a different perspective or a
Well,
different take
well,
on something.
well. What would be a? I think
So
what.
Starbucks, they had a plan to, with what I read, Starbucks was going to come up with their own brand of T-shirt or whatever for their employees to wear. And in
Mhm.
the meantime, initially it was like, so just let's wait that out and don't like bring in your own Black Lives Matter stuff. And it got pounced on. And so then they like were like, okay, wear whatever you have. We have this coming, but go ahead.
Yeah,
So
that's
and I
and
and I'm just saying, look, and I don't know that dominating is even a bad word. If you're a wrestler and you're dominating, you're winning. You know,
well,
you're
it has negative connotations when it
and
comes
I'm
to.
telling you, in the white community, that's what an honest perspective is. And I'm asking you, I'm not trying to insult. I'm
Yeah.
never trying to insult.
Oh yeah,
I'm
no.
saying there is a reality of the pendulum swinging, and it looks like before kind of like for a reason it's been on the other side for a long time. So now as it goes over, the rising up is saying we're going to proactively in an aggressive fashion do this. Now that doesn't mean that the other elements aren't there as
Well,
well.
so what sides are what sides, like, explain to me like what the sides are when you're talking about the pendulum swinging. You're saying that like it's going from one side to the next. So like what are those two sides?
That what you've already said, that white America has been the dominant force in this land in every arena for the most part.
Yeah.
You can name certain people that aren't. Okay, you can pull, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, we
Yeah.
can pull people that are easy to pull, right? To go,
Mm-hmm.
they're a dominant force. They're loved, beloved, and all of those things,
Yeah.
right? But that hasn't trickled down to, all of Black America.
Well,
Okay. So power and domination, or saying we're going to dismantle the power of white America and we're going to become a force to be reckoned with as well, because we belong here. This isn't okay that this has happened, and it's over.
well, I think what are the clear distinctions between the sides? Is it just white people versus non-white people? Or
I
are
think
we talking about sort of a racist society or a more equitable society?
no, I'm talking more equitable and how to become more equitable. And it's assertively putting everybody, like the playing field is it's being like, it's like we're going to, I say, like, take over, to level the playing field, to make it proper, to make it correct. We're no longer going to accept this. And if it's not being accepted, nobody's letting go of challenging it.
Well,
And aggressively, passionately. I listened to this one woman on Instagram, and she is a writer, and she's a Black woman, and she's like, I love that she got on one day and she's like, I'm angry, she's sipping her tea or coffee or whatever,
yeah.
and she then speaks about why she's so angry, and it was so brilliant. And then the next day, and she's like, and I'm not going to tell you what to read and what to do, and you go do your own homework and education, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, she gets on going, I'm still angry. But she's gotten so many comments of value and appreciation. And she goes, and I'm a teacher. So I'm going to, here's what you can read, and here's what you can
Yeah.
read. And here, so I'm just saying that everybody's listening now.
Yeah.
Everybody's paying attention. And the pendulum swing, and it's aggressive and it's assertive. And I'm not just trying to put a negative connotation, but I said honestly to my friend, I was just like, it's going to be a while that this kind of pendulum is going to stay over here for a while. And then it'll kind of have this a new way about it. Just
Yeah, I
like
mean,
when 9/11 happened, guess what? We still take off our shoes, we still do that. That's the norm now, right?
mm-hmm.
This is going to be highlighted right now. This isn't just going to go away like it may have in the
Yeah,
past, right?
yeah,
And
I think
it's
I think
in my opinion, it's like it's going to be
yeah,
strong, hard, harsh at times, and
yeah.
dominating.
Like I think a good way to think about it, opposed to sort of like the pendulums, like the pendulum swinging, because is to think about it more of like a game where like, you know, one player has cheat codes, the other player doesn't. And so all that's happening is that the cheat codes are just slowly being taken away. So that it's an equal playing field.
Wait, what do they have? The cheat codes, are you saying?
Yeah, so cheat codes to just, you know,
I
get
don't know
ahead.
what a cheat code is.
So
I don't know what that means.
a cheat code is a way to
A cheat code.
yeah, yeah, cheat
CODE.
code.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not hearing code. I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
cheat code.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
hearing
cheat
like
code.
Chico. I was like, what's a
Yeah.
cheat
Yeah,
code?
cheat
Okay. No,
code.
I get that they
Yeah.
can cheat. Like in
Yeah.
hockey, and they got their ways to cheat.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So all it is you're just taking away the cheat codes over time, and this is sort of like one of those things where, you know, like society that we know has been just to benefit, you know, white people, and so now we're taking away the things that have specifically benefited white people and made them comfortable, and we're now starting to make other people comfortable as well. And so we're seeing the backlash because when you take away stuff that makes you comfortable, it makes you uncomfortable. And so you'll notice that the people that are more outraged about these things that are being taken away, they're not black people.
Mm-hmm.
They're white people. The white people are the ones that have the most visceral reactions to this. You know, and so
Well, because they
it's
don't believe that they are to blame for it, and now they're paying a
yeah.
price for something that they didn't do.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you know, like when I go to the owl, I don't feel like I deserve to be reminded of, you know, those racial stereotypes, you know, but that's because it's not meant to benefit me. It's you know, for somebody that for communities that don't see that as a positive you know, depiction, it's still being used and people revere it, but it's not black people. And so it's really sort of looking at that and looking at that from a more sincere and more equitable standpoint.
So, do you think it is more sincere? So, I'm going to ask this question because I'm going to tell you something. Every brand in the entire world practically now is jumped on this bandwagon, and
Yeah.
you see more black everything everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Ads, television, they're pulling everything out that they never used in the past.
Yes,
You don't
exactly.
think that that's but
They've never used
they
it.
never have.
Yeah.
But it's so contrived and it's so manipulated and it's so like,
Well,
okay, finally they're doing it, but
because
do you not feel that
every
way?
every time an agenda from the black community was put out there for white companies to buy into,
Right.
they always said that stuff would not sell if we marketed it that way.
So now they're
And so-
using it.
Yeah, and so now we're using it, and so now we see that blackness will sell. That means
Well,
that
again, but that's still so at the end of the day, which look at it's all usury manipulation for white people, black people, you know, all these companies
Yeah.
that are advertisers. It's to get you to just spend your money. That's
oh yeah,
all it
yeah,
really is.
yeah, oh yeah,
But
for sure.
I'm just saying, like, it's like we're supporting, but they're also making money at this at the same time.
Well,
by
everybody's
utilizing.
well, every money. We live in a society where money gets things done, and for black communities, you can't do anything without money. You know, like that's just like you can't start a program that supports your community unless you have money. That's why we see
Right,
all
of
these.
course.
That's why we see all these success stories of athletes coming back and going back to their community because they have money and they can finally do right by their community. Because quite often, money has never been equitably given to black communities,
Right.
and there's racist laws in place that have siphoned money out of the community and in ways that are not being done in white communities. And so money is such a big thing, and in commercialism and entertainment and all that, they it's really sort of the value of being black in a commercial society, to where they say, if you put a black person in your clothes, then white people will not buy it because of racism. And that's one of the things that
No, I understand that. I
so
completely understand that.
yeah, so that's
I'm just
why.
saying they've jumped on board. Well, I know. I'm just saying it's. I sometimes find it very curious
Oh yeah,
because nobody
it's
can go and make anything right now. They've had it in the can, they've had it in their archives, and they have pulled everything black out of the files, and they're like, we're using all this
yeah.
to. Is it to support? Is it to use? Is it to?
Well, I think that uh uh it took national riots to get this stuff to happen. And so
It's to
hopefully,
benefit their company.
and it's to benefit the black community too, because it
Well, it
forces.
also shows how much they've not done it.
Yeah.
How
I
much
mean,
is there
it
that they've not
validates
used?
everything that black people have been saying over and over and over again. And so in a commercial society where everything runs on money, literally it's in the name. We live in capitalism. It's capitalism. Like everything requires money. Supporting a black business requires money. Starting a black business requires money. Buying black requires money. And so it's the money part is neither here nor there, because that has to happen. The commercial thing is neither here nor there. That has to happen. It's finally we're looking at the landscape in which black people are depicted, black people are treated, and black people and the opportunities that black people have. And for people that grew up in my parents' era and my grandparents' era and before them, like this is finally the time where black people are seen, or it's at the forefront, in terms of like there's mass adoption for companies to push aside sort of the subtle racism that has been perpetuated, and say, okay, we're going to support the black community by making a statement,
But
whether that statement is you know you know valued or not. It says one thing to make a statement, compared to, because there's companies that are still staying silent. And so you don't want to, at the end of the day, you don't want to be one of those companies that's not saying anything.
so you see, that's actually the point that I was just saying a little bit earlier. Is it's a dominating. You don't want to be that company because
Well,
we're taking over.
well, no, it's
And
not. It's
again,
not
I'm
that.
not trying to say that to be offensive. I'm just saying that's what it sounds like. It's like, if you don't get on board, you're going to get left
Well,
behind.
it's more of you. It's more of, if you don't say anything, it shows how much you care.
But do you think that companies are just doing this because they have this material available to them? They see where like jumping on the bandwagon of, I'm going to benefit if I get on board for this. You can make it sound like they care, and they can say they care, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is the money
Yeah,
of what. And look, if commercials get aired, black actors get paid,
yeah,
so that gives the black actors, at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? My face is on air. I'm getting paid. And I never was before.
yeah.
So I appreciate that. But I'm talking about usury of white companies, just as we were talking about Aunt
Hmm.
Jemima.
Yeah.
Like, they're jumping on this bandwagon, going, not because, oh, we just want to be supportive. It's like, well, it's time to jump onto this, and let's throw everything we have at people, because we're going to make money at the end of the day with that.
Well, they're going to make money at the end of the
Their
day,
company
regardless.
is going to make money. Their company is going to make
Yeah,
money.
yeah. Their company is going to
Just
make
like Aunt
money.
Jemima they've made money. They're still using a time, and which you're perhaps interpreting as, well, they're supporting us. I'm like, well, they're making good money at this
Well,
right now. I'm
they're
thrilled to
making.
see it. I'm thrilled to see it. I'm just
Well,
saying they're making a lot of money.
they're going to make money regardless. That that's
Okay, but
that's that's neither, that's they're going to make money regardless. I mean, like that's just what it is. They're going to make money. But the conversation becomes, Are they going to make money um, depicting black people in a positive light, or are they going to make money perpetuating racist stereotypes? That becomes the broader conversation. They're going to make money because they make a product that people buy. People will get over the racism if they enjoy the product. That's just the society that we live in, you know. But will they continue to make money using a racist stereotype, or will they continue, or will they make money, being considerate of the black community? That becomes the broader conversation
I
of
just
it.
go, is it really people being aware and being supportive of the black community, or is it just still usury at the right time and the right moment?
I
And I am sure that is in play,
Well,
just
yeah,
as you said, there's not pure motives on anybody. Look, John Singleton said the only color Hollywood understands is green. That's what
yes,
if you
but
make money for them, they want you. You
when
know,
you have that green, they're going to look at who's handing them that green,
that's right.
you
So
know.
I
and
get that.
so and
So
so there's a so there's always a racial component, but I think it's too early to like tell,
I know
because
that's why I'm asking where we like. Here's where we are right now, and I know
yeah,
I'm using the pendulum swing, and I'm just saying it out loud. I don't know that I'm right or wrong. This is the feel I get, and
yeah,
again, I desire to be like, when they say they want to dismantle the police, and then they've had the conversation where how do we make it where police deal with crime, and then we bring in um, other people to deal with perhaps mental illness issues.
yeah,
So I am a de-escalator. I am someone who has done de-escalation for longer than 20
mm-hmm,
years.
yeah,
Even when I was younger, I was a de-escalator. And you know what? Because I was sick, when I was so sick, I suffered with severe PTSD 20 years ago and was going to kill myself. So I understand the language. I actually even found out at 5 that I had ADHD, but really I was high functioning Asperger's. And I'm even better with the treatment and the work that I've had done. So oh God, where was I going with this? Sorry. De-escalator. So there is a language, there is an understanding. I remember 7 years ago in my apartment complex where I lived in Arizona, right across the way from me. Like, I'm not kidding you. SWAT teams and everything came in. This woman was in her apartment throwing furniture through a big bay window, and they went at her. And I really literally wanted to go to the cops and go, I can get her out.
yeah,
And so when I worked for a nonprofit 2 years later, that impressed me so much. How they were handling it was completely incorrect. They were just escalating the situation.
yeah,
And so when I worked for a nonprofit for a year, I went into very escalated situations, and people who were suicidal, who were going to hurt themselves or other people, and going to commit suicide or hurt somebody else. And I went in and I would de-escalate the situation. I mean, I remember this one principal. I had this kid like ready to go, and the principal came in, and we were all sitting down and talking, and this principal just like picked at him, and he blew up again. I was like, look at this dumb principal. And I was like, what are you doing, you dumbass?
mm-hmm,
So then however I acted, I had people from the streets that I got to hospital, and the medical team. He was escalated again. Then they had shoved me off into the waiting room, and then they called me back, and I got him settled down. Like, are you hearing voices? So I'm a de-escalator. That's what we need
yeah.
in these communities, is a de-escalator. I love the concept of that. We can't just get rid of the police department. Anybody who
Well, I
thinks,
think you just gave a perfect reason for why you should defund police departments.
well,
That's
how
literally that
about
example.
instead of defund, redesign? Because defund, if you have somebody who, whether they're red, white, pink, blue, whatever, they
There's no
start
pink
coming
people.
at Huh?
There's no pink or blue people.
Okay, but my point is if somebody started coming at you with a gun, or was breaking into your home, or threatening someone you love, you would call the police. You need help. So I'm not
But
disagreeing that we need.
that's not what defund the police department is
Okay,
saying.
but what people think defunding, again, what pe- it's like extreme language.
No,
Like,
like there's a difference between abolishing the police and defunding, because all
so
defunding says is that uh, when I mean to contextualize this, it's like police departments should not have heavy machinery.
right.
They should not have the budget to buy a tank. They should not have military grade weapons, and all that stuff costs a lot of money. And so
So
by defending the police departments, you're able to allocate the funds that are available, and instead of giving a large percentage of the funds available to police departments to get military grade stuff like tear gas and all that stuff, you allocate those funds for mental health services,
okay, so
for community based stuff.
but sometimes, in my from my perspective, like, language is important. And like you said, I didn't like white privilege.
Yeah.
It hit me a certain way, blah, blah, blah. But there's some language that's meant just to, it doesn't depict. You want people to look really deeper. And do you want,
Oh no, I you want the shock value to be
well,
effective.
yeah, like, it gets old though. If everything's a shock value, it's like, I don't want to listen anymore.
Well,
I'm
it's
really,
because, and I
so
say that
because you could say,
because,
let's redesign this. This needs to be redesigned.
yeah,
This needs to be reallocated. But to just go, well, we're going to defund the police department. That sounds like, so if you don't want to contextualize, that's all you hear, and people are angry, you're just pissing people off. And it's like, we can be more effective with this. And that's
uh,
where my question is there a willingness to have a more, like you said, the language that you use, it's, everybody wants to escalate. And I'm
yeah.
like, let's
I think
be more
I
productive.
think it to kind of to sort of bring this back full circle. It's what is what is the most effective way to combat subtle racism? It is to use overt tactics of anti-racism. And so when we're talking about defunding the police, it's not to defund. It's not because we're talking about police departments in white communities. Is it because we're talking about police departments in black communities that have military grade style weapons, and they're going into black communities, and they aren't properly trained to de-escalate situations. They're not properly trained to deal with these things.
So I'm not a fan of escalating language at times. It's just to prick. It's in my opinion, intelligent conversation. I get that there's moments where you listen, fuck is really a great word, and it's
Yeah, it's very powerful.
multifaceted.
Yeah, very
Okay.
powerful.
And there's different contexts for it. So
Yeah,
but somebody who just swears and uses it all day long, I get so
yeah,
bored with the conversation.
yeah.
So proper placing of intelligence is, like, fine, we have the let's just charge people, but let's now be intelligent with language so that we start to be effective. So people hear defund the police, and all they're going to say, and I've seen it, not in my circle, on comments, like, oh, you're going to need the police. You just want to take, that's impossible. Okay, we'll take our police away, and then you take care of your communities that are just killing each other and being, whatever.
But
So,
that's
do you want
under
to?
this that's under the assumption that black people are killing each other.
Well,
And
and listen, if a 70-year-old person is watching the news,
yeah,
do we want to reach 70-year-old people? Do we want to try to do that? Who have a limited take in of information?
I
Do
mean,
we
for
do we
the
care about them?
um, I mean, it's these are the same these 70-year-old people were probably the same people that picked on the black kid at school.
So the 70-year-old people that I'm thinking of didn't. They treated people really well and lived in Brooklyn and was always very they didn't look they were friends with whatever color.
Yeah, but these people still could have those same ideas.
So it feels like there's no ability to contribute a different thought than what is already being spouted.
Well,
As
no,
if
it's there. There's always been opportunities, but people people are at their wits' end now
I know, but
because
so let's
the subtleties of society in terms of pushing forward for equity, pushing forward for equality, treating people the same. That has always been the buzzword of the century, But at the end of the day, black people get the the poor straw, get the short straw.
the short end of the stick.
Yeah, they get the short end of the stick. And
And
why
I
is
don't
it?
want that to continue to
But
happen.
but why does that always continue to happen?
I know, but you know what? It does. And look, I've been trying to watch, and I'm
Yeah,
using names of what I've watched.
yeah,
Spike Lee's like, it's changing.
yeah.
I
And it
believe
and
it.
it's changing because people are becoming more overt with their
You know what?
tactics.
No, you know why it's changing? That's
I
not
mean,
why. It's not because people are being, nope, it's not because people are being more overt. That's
okay,
not the only reason. You know what? In my opinion, as the white person,
yeah.
you know why I think it's changing? Because people saw George Floyd murdered.
Uh, not
No.
necessarily, not necessarily,
Okay.
because
So white America,
like
I'm a
people,
white person. White people saw that.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter what color you are, that, and people have tried to even make it like who he was and all of that. And that's
Well,
despicable.
I
I
would I
listened
would
to
say
Dave
that
Chappelle.
remember Philando Castillo. He was a gun owner. He was in his car with his daughter in the back, and his girlfriend was live streaming. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He even told the cop that he had a firearm in the car, not on him,
Yes,
in the car.
I know. I
And
know.
the cop reacted and shot him on live stream.
I know. And
And what
people
this what
put in
this
their brain like he was in danger, he had a gun. And
yeah,
all of the
but
context of that is getting lost and 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 it's not understood.
but these
It's
are
it's
but this is but
horrific.
but this is
It's
but this is also we live in a country that's pro gun, literally in the Second Amendment. And
right.
so what we're talking about is we have to contextualize this stuff. And we have to say, okay, why is it that if a gun owner is black, and you don't even see the gun, he just says that you have a gun, that you see that as a threat. But if a white person rushes the state capitol with the AK-47 because they want to get their hair cut, why is that not seen as a threat? And so
And
and so all of
you're
these, all
you're
of these
correct on
things.
this,
Yeah.
Stephen.
And so that's where people were frustrated, to where
I,
it's not
I
just it's not George Floyd, because George Floyd is going to pass on. Like
okay,
that's going to
see,
change.
and I this is where we really disagree, in my opinion, on why, because all of those cases, I told you last podcast, like the 12-year-old in Chicago, what South Side of Chicago 20 years ago that was murdered. Like I was out of my mind, right? Trayvon Martin, all of the people that we all now are we've gotten used to this, sadly. It was like George Floyd broke the straw that broke the camel's back, that just broke the dam.
Yeah.
And now everything that has been kind of on this one side shattered, and it just came like completely within the white community for sure.
Yeah. And
This was it. And so now is the time. Now, young white America, even older white America. So now is the time where people are listening. But this is where I think that language that isn't just always trying to be shocking is significant. is valuable, and that you want, well, you got to look behind some people don't do that. So I'm not saying don't say the same thing. Make it so it is viable to people, that they can understand it,
I,
that like redesigning, that we're not going to continue to use funds inappropriately. We're going to take money away from departments.
I think
We're going to
that
relook at the budget and redesign the system.
well, yeah, I think this becomes a sort of a in an elevator pitch. You don't have the opportunity to do that because you have 30 seconds, and so we've seen from white communities what is effective in galvanizing people, and we see how effective that was in getting, in getting Trump elected. I mean, because those same tactics that white people were sort of frustrated about are the very same tactics that Republicans and Trump used to galvanize people to vote for them. And so those
Well,
things work. Those things work. You know.
do you know that any other white person doing that besides Donald Trump would be crucified for what he's doing?
Well, he's
But
still
it's
being
Donald Trump and him
he's
alone, and
he's
now
still
people,
being crucified.
and now he's but there's people who adore him, and
Yeah.
I know people personally
Yes.
that I don't agree with. But what I'm saying, that only has a certain lifespan, and so is it possible when we're in these discussions, do I have like, I don't know, it's like, am I the only one who has to shift in this conversation at times?
Well,
Because
it's when you're trying to compare the two, it's you have to understand the context of in these types of conversations, the person that never has to shift is the white person quite often. If you go to any sort of if you're dealing with sort of black issues with people of color in a corporate environment, in a predominantly white environment, the person of color always has to shift their views and their opinions to align with people, to not make them uncomfortable. And so if you feel like you have to shift your views to make people comfortable in the conversation, that's just dismantling, or really it's just understanding what black people have to do on a regular
well,
basis.
but okay, so again, I guess part of what I'm hoping with all of this is that it's a give and take. It doesn't mean that I have to learn things. I don't disagree with that. But is there no learning on the other side
Well,
either?
that's under the assumption that people are doing things misinformed.
Well, I don't know that I may not agree with how something's being done. I still want to have something change and I want to be effective.
Yeah, yeah,
I really want to be effective. And so, if people are just going to yell at me after a while, I'm just going to stop caring.
yeah. But it's
I'm going to go back to my white privilege and not care anymore.
well, that I think that is the privilege.
That's right.
Like that's the privilege.
Right.
But
here's what I'm saying to you. But listen, I'm just telling you, I've taken this on. I feel like I've wanted to, not just now, but most of my life, and I've had different ways of doing it in my own way. So now I'm saying I want to be effective. I want to, like, there are things that maybe I look at and don't necessarily agree with and wonder if it can't be doing it differently. And if that's not even on the table to consider, because, we're just going to do it this way, and we've got our reason why we're going to do it this way. We don't care what you think. And that's fine. But my eventuality is, okay. And even if it's not me, I've already seen it. People are like, bye. Like,
Yeah.
Fine, let's all just get along. We're sick of this.
Yeah.
We're tired of it. Everybody matters. Let's keep going. Like, enough of this already. And I'm trying to think to myself, and that's the norm, there's a big hit and then it's slowly, the
Yeah.
news media is like, and it just goes away. So all I'm wondering and asking is, I want to be a part of helping resolve some of this and continue to be effective. And I'm saying, if you use continual inflammatory language, I question that
Well,
of its efficacy, even if you have a point to it. It's like, if it's all inflammatory, then fuck, I don't even want to hear anymore. Like, it's enough already.
yeah.
I want to keep caring. I want people to keep caring.
Well,
That's my point.
I think the what people often the criticism that people has is, oh, is there another way? Why can't you do it this way? Why can't you do it that way? Well, if the amount of people that criticized it actually gave an action plan and said, well, if you follow this plan, this is something that you could explore. It actually presented actions, presented a plan, opposed to just being critical when they're sort of when they're backseat driving, essentially. Then it would be received a little bit more. But if you're just
But
gonna,
that's what I'm trying to do here.
yeah, but
I'm actually trying to do here.
yeah,
I'm
but
not just trying to backseat drive. I'm trying to say, this is something that,
then as a driver, what exactly would you do?
I would probably present the very same issues that are being brought to the public about how funds are being enormous amounts of money is being spent towards the police departments and the system. It is time to change that.
Yeah. And so
it's time to completely redesign all of it.
Yeah. So why is it that in response to sort of the inflammatory stuff, you sort of check out, or you consider checking out of it rather than doing exactly what you just said you would do? That and I think that
again, because to me, defund, like, we're gonna defund you. Like, when I see people just, to all cops, look, I don't respond well to endless and like this negative, like, fist, like, in a face. I don't respond well to that.
Yeah.
That's not interesting to me. That's not, so why wouldn't I want to? It's like, because it just feels unrealistic.
Well, yeah,
to just, let's just defund. And so there may be a plan in place, but again, it's this inflammatory nonstop, and I'm like, oh God, they'll work it out. I don't even want to care anymore.
Well,
you know what?
I think if you had more stake in the game, then you would care more.
So here's my question: how do I have more stake in the game? If I had cancer, you would care about it, but you know what? You got a life to live.
Yeah.
You got your own problems. You got your own deals. You're going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? People want to stay in the game. White people want to stay in the game.
Yeah. Then fine.
And not all white people want ongoing inflammatory language in a way that doesn't feel like it makes sense. So my question is, can I make a suggestion of going, can we look at this differently to make it more comprehensively, easily? For
the whole
not
concept,
spoon feed, but for God's sake.
The whole concept of racism is incomprehensible. If you really look at it, where like a lot of the things that black and white communities, the differences are literally because they have darker skin tone and they have different texture hair. That's literally the root of it. You look at that person and say, oh, you look like less than a white person because you're black. Like that's the bare basics of it. And so it's incomprehensible in and of itself. And so trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense is you're just going to run around in circles with it. And so I guess the way to, what I would say is that if there's a particular approach that is not palatable for you, then sit there and ask yourself, okay, what is something that I can do that I feel more comfortable doing in this fight? Because it's a culture, it's a battle of cultures. and with that, there's in any sort of battle or war, each person has their own, there's roles that can be played. Whether you support black businesses, but in black organizations with money, whether you go out to the street and you protest, whether you go and try to attack policies that are discriminatory, whether where you come up with action plans and you enact them in marginalized communities, whether you train people to communicate effectively. There's so many different things.
Right, but this is what we're doing right here, and so I'm saying, I'm offering a thought.
Yeah.
To the whole process, in order not to have a privilege, I'm offering a thought that I believe is addressing efficacy.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's all I care about.
Yeah, but
at the end of the day,
even
I'm a problem solver.
Yeah, but to consider even checking out, because
when I say me, I'm talking about
yeah. But I think
the representation, just like you're representing, a whole other. I'm not talking me personally. I'm talking about.
I'm not talking about like you personally.
Quickly, people go, I'm done.
Yeah,
done. But what do you mean? That's crazy. Defund the police. You're going to need the police department. I mean,
but they're also the same people that would be upset when you say they have white privilege.
No, but okay. So not every time you might disagree with a terminology means that the person that disagrees with the terminology has to learn something deeper. Not all the time. So I'm just saying, in what I'm reading in the comment section, and I feel like it's not being heard.
Well, yeah, no, well, that's
like, and it's not just coming from me. It's like, so it's like we can swat it away. It's like, well, that's their white privilege, or that's their, and that may be true.
No, it's what I'm saying is that in the broader context, this is something like white people are more aware of this now in a mainstream level. People that have never been to black communities, they're more aware of things that are happening because of what's happening now. But that level, that lack of awareness of sort of the experience of black people and what we're talking about, like that stuff, like black people have felt unheard for decades.
Of course.
So after Birmingham 1963, after that, after Martin Luther King got shot in the face, white people are still not hearing black people. And so that's just an uphill battle. Like that's just an uphill battle.
So when white people try and are caring, admit those things, get it to the best that they can.
Yeah. Then.
So is it, and it is, the question is, so like you mentioned, like lots of things that people can choose to want to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this was one of my, attempt to do that, to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And so my desire is to be completely and utterly able to sit back, hear, listen, talk, be honest, share my opinion. We may agree, we may disagree.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that hopefully more is learned and understood. That's at least what my hope is.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily left with this word defund in the same way that I am with, white privilege. Because I think it's a fabulous idea to restructure this whole thing. It's a necessity. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But ongoing inflammatory language for me personally.
Well, is defund really inflammatory?
Say again?
Is defund really inflammatory?
Yeah, because I think it shuts people. People think that you're crazy. Not you, but it's crazy. Like, what do you mean defund the police? Why are you going to need them? Like, they don't even go past that. They just think, okay, we'll take the police away from you, and then you have your way.
But
Like,
that's
well,
not
see how you like that?
that's not defunding the police.
Okay, I'm just telling you
You
that's how
know?
people take it.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm saying that's how people take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to work with people who don't like a truth all the time.
Hmm.
And the art of that is, how do I redesign it, even though I have the same goal? How do I listen? How do I speak? How do I know when to push forward and push back?
I
And so people aren't listening past defund. They don't care the
Yeah.
context. They're just like, that's crazy.
Well, I
That's
think it's
crazy.
the power of attrition, and I will say, because I think I talked about this before or last week, where they had the history of the adoption of the term Black Lives Matter, and they showed that, like, when Black Lives Matter first started trending, there was negative connotation for mainstream America, because they're like, well, all lives matter, blah blah blah. So there was that visceral sort of reaction. But over time, through consistency, that has become more and more acceptable, and now we come to a head where it's skyrocketed. And so I think that Black Lives Matter, like the term Black Lives Matter, was seen as inflammatory at first, and now it's not seen as inflammatory. It's seen as empowering for the Black community, and for other people to use it, it's a term of solidarity. And so that sort of visceral reaction from the very same people that thought that Black Lives Matter was inflammatory, we're going to see sort of that cultural shift as well, as people start to unpeel what the meaning of defund the police actually means. And so I think that we have actual data to show that just the consistency of these statements has power to bring about change in a positive way. Whether that's going to happen overnight, no, that's definitely not, because the conception of Black Lives Matter, and now I think that was what, like 8 to 10 years for that, and so it's a long stretch of time. But I think that data is on the side of those who make sort of those poignant statements, because we're in sort of the climate in the society that makes that stuff readily able to sort of like share. And so
So I can only concede that. So look, if then I just sit back and go, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm sharing my opinion on something.
Yeah.
And I still believe I absolutely hear what you're saying, and
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. And so I have an opinion of this.
Yeah.
And I may wish for something else. I may not get that. And okay, so then it's a matter of going, we'll see. And in time, maybe I'll go, well, I was wrong about that. Or,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't very effective, that word. We'll
Yeah.
see. And my opinion of that is to try to contribute, maybe it not taking 8 years to be palatable.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole, that's like,
So that's my point is,
yeah.
do we have to like wait till everybody gets to understand that a little better, or could we use it in a different way to make it, to be more effective, where it doesn't take as long to get there?
Yeah, I think it becomes a question of why does it take 8 years for?
Well, because
for that?
again, that's my point sometimes.
Well, I
Like,
think it's
could you create a different could you, and that's where the inflammatory, do you know Howard Stern?
Yeah, I know Howard Stern. I mean, I don't know him, but yeah, I know who he
Okay,
is.
I mean, you've listened to him,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, 20 years ago, him on the radio, he was the most inflammatory man alive. And there were people who loved him. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh God, after a while, I was just like, there's no way I can just, and it was obscene and it was absurd and it was shock jock and it was all that thing, right?
Yeah.
And yet you could clearly, there were moments of brilliance that you saw. And of course, but he was a Donald Trump-esque kind of guy in all the sexual connotations that he threw out there. And
he's a cultural icon.
completely. But yet, he would tell you now he's an idiot. He was an idiot back then, and how sick he was, and
Yeah.
how uninformed he was, and how that's what he used because the intelligence that he has now that he's gotten therapy and he's done all these things, he is this brilliant man,
Yeah.
and he is very I think I even because they just did this whole thing that he did blackface too,
Yeah.
and so he was like, I was wrong, I was wrong, I was wrong, and this is why I did it, but I was an idiot and I was wrong.
Hmm.
And I'm just saying that his intelligence has transformed, and I'm not saying people aren't intelligent. My point is that the shock jock or the inflammatory, only using that nonstop, I just want, I just want, does it have to take as long as 6 years because people aren't getting past their visceral thinking that it's absurd? And so they've shut down and they're not even going to consider it because they think that's stupid, or you deserve what you get. You defund the police, you get what you get. Now, you may think it's this whole context thing, but other people have just shut down.
Yeah.
And so that is what takes time.
And I think
That
that is that understanding the context of civil rights, um this is something that, like, what we're experiencing now is something that Martin Luther King never got to experience, like never got to see, you know? And so literally, like, in his whole lifetime, he never got to see this stuff, and so I think there's this component of time, because it took time to build these structures. It took time to prime these people. It took time to sort
well,
of make this landscape, that
but
it's just going to take time.
and so there's just again, so that's the perspective I hold and I wonder about.
Yeah.
And again, I want nothing but efficacy. And I'm certainly one to go, well, I was wrong about that, or gosh, I really understand that
Yeah.
differently, or you know what, I get it. I am more than willing to do that. And then there's things that I might go, well, I just don't know that I agree.
Yeah. I mean,
Or, and you might not with me either, which at the end of the day, now that we're 2 hours
yeah,
into
we're
this
2 hours in.
thing, remember we used to think like 20 minutes, we'll do
Oh
20
yeah, 20
minutes.
minutes. Yeah, no problem. But
We'll be wrapped up by then.
yeah.
So listen, that's something that I'm going to throw in. And again, this whole thing wasn't designed to just be one perspective. It was to not only just find where we can agree, but at the end of the day, if we disagree, we are okay with that
Yeah.
and challenged, I think, at least,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Oh yeah, for
So,
sure.
and it'll be food for thought for next week.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So here's my
definitely.
question. I percolate on things, even things that
Mhm.
I don't like. People years ago would tell me something, and I tell them, I was like, I do not like what you're telling me.
Mhm.
But the truth of something never seems to be, I never can like let go of that. It kind of lingers, and I
Yeah.
have to learn. And I'm like, why am I the only one who has to learn? So my question is that by the sheer fact that you're here, my question is there any learning that you need here either?
So I always ask, in growing up in a society, for as a black person growing up in a society that that has shown to benefit white people more than it benefits me, what more do I need to learn, navigating a white society that does not benefit me? That becomes my question, for myself, because I already understand white history more than my history. I already understand how to navigate, and not make white people uncomfortable, even if it means changing my hair, even if it means, some people go to the extent of lightening their skin, to make white people feel comfortable. And so when that question is sort of brought forth to me, it's like, well, what more do I need to know? What more do I need to know to navigate this?
So my question is that there are white people who really are supportive and have never wanted you to have any of those things be in your world. Never. And they've always cared about that. They've
Right.
always cared about it. Just because I don't live in your shoes and I don't live in your house and I don't
Yeah.
experience it, I've always cared about it. And I have always been grieved about it. And I've always tried to, in my own way, best I can,
Yeah.
be a part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And so that's, is that of value to where I
It's
can have a voice in your heart and mind as well.
I think it becomes, it's one thing to care, and it's another thing uh to sacrifice for it.
So I've had my own place of where I've had to sacrifice, where I've had to take and do my time. And
Yeah.
any place within, like you just said earlier, you got to have money. You got to have money to
Hmm.
have a business, to have a home, to have a life. You know, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of money. I
Yeah.
have never had a lot of money. I don't have any resources. There's nobody going to be able to pay for anything for me, right?
Well,
So
that
so my point is, is that even within all of that reality of construct, whatever contributions I've made with the Black culture that I've come in contact, that I've had real life firsthand experience, that who really, like, for me to give you a litany of things that I've done and tried and all of that stuff, like, I had to still live my reality and help in the things that I could with everything that I'm doing. So I've done to the best of my capabilities what you've just stated. But I couldn't be in your shoes and in your person.
yeah.
But I have done all that I could up to this point. And now can I be reinvigorated, recharged? I made a call to you because something shifted in me where it was time to do this differently again.
Yeah.
I wanted to go and do this differently. I've gone to Black Americans and said, how can we do this differently, collaboratively? How can, I've
I
been trying to problem solve.
I
So
think
my,
it
so
becomes,
is that of not value at all? That really
well,
doesn't hold any value of ability to then have a little voice of involvement.
no, like it's I think this is where you where people, white people that are trying to get involved, it's not about you having a voice. It's about how are we pushing the culture forward in the right direction, because
Right.
it
So I'm just saying, well, that might not be the best way to go about
well
it
well well
at
then
this
what
time,
is well
in
then
this
what is
alone.
well no, but then when you say but that might not be the best way to go about it, then what is the exact way to go about it?
Well, I have stated to you a few times, like,
Well, no, like what is the actual like 10-step plan? Like what is the actual plan that
well, right
people
now
could
we
you
were
give it
just
to
talking
somebody and
about,
you follow them?
I know, but right now you said defund the police, and
Yeah,
I'm talking about that word
yeah.
and what that means, just using a different word and doing the same
Well,
steps that
what is
everybody's
the
already talking about.
yeah? But what is that word though?
But it's already, I don't have to redesign what plan you guys have already, what is already in the defund perspective.
Oh no, yeah. But
I don't,
what is the word that you would replace defund with though?
I redesign.
Okay, well, does that have the same impact? If you say redesign the police, like, is that going to have the
Okay.
same
So
impact
maybe,
as it?
so I will ponder a word
Yeah, because I think
because,
the
I
frustrations
just,
that people have with it are because there will be criticism,
I
but
guess I just want a conversation about, like, maybe I don't have to come up with the word. Can
but
you
yeah,
at least understand? Can you understand what I'm trying to say?
yeah. People understand. I definitely understand. But when you have a criticism, you have to, much like everything else. Like when you have a criticism, you have to have sort of a follow up of like what are
How
some
about
action items.
reallocate?
Does
Reallocate.
Yeah, but do you think reallocate would be as poignant as defund?
Maybe it would be more acceptable as if it's said a lot. I do. Reallocate is more accurate.
But that sounds like a pencil pusher. Like, is that something that a 13-year-old kid in a protest would say? Does that sound like it has a ring to it? Like it's, I think, when we have these when we have like those conversations about, what other things can you do? It's like, well, what other things can you do? Because just saying that there's other things doesn't actually s- explain what other things there are. And so
So it's so then exploring, is there another way to say it? Listen, fair points
yeah.
that you're making. Okay? And I'm not a marketing person.
Oh yeah. I mean, and so that's
So
where.
but so knocking look, I'm a collaborative person.
Hmm.
There's plenty of things that I've been able to do where I may have had an original thought, but somebody else has taken that thought and made it, shine
Yeah.
brightly. So I'm just talking about the conversation of it.
Yeah.
And am I happy to try to consider a different word? Absolutely. What could it be? And you can shoot me down easily, for sure. But it's still the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And,
all.
and
Is it possible to come up with a different word?
I mean,
Sure.
I would imagine, it's
And do I have it in my brain right now? Not necessarily.
yeah.
But my point is that I I think I'm trying to say I don't want people to shut down. I want people to get it. And I get that shock does it at time, and that's the point of it. And it's accurate,
Yeah.
but not all the time.
Yeah. And I think people will get fatigued, and once people get back to work, then they'll have other things to
That's
do.
all my point
You
is,
know.
really. And it's like, do I need you to agree with me? There's a part of me that wants you to understand what I'm saying is that fatigue is coming. Fatigue is already there.
Oh yeah.
And then comes impatience and anger and
Yep. And then it really,
discourse.
rat a tat tat tat. It starts going crazy after that.
Well, or you know what's worse? Apathy.
Yeah, I think that's just sort of human nature, though. Uh,
Yeah, so how do we, like, you're right, it is normal. But is it possible to have it happen less than it could
um,
or is?
I don't, and I think this sort of moment in time is really telling because when we're talking about police brutality, we're not really talking about George Floyd anymore right now. Like we're talking about Breonna Taylor, we're talking about Rashad Brooks, like we're talking about these things that are still happening despite the climate that we're in. And so, as we are at 2 minutes and 15 seconds, I think that like it's from when we talk this time to next time, uh, I'm curious to see where the conversation around police brutality is now because it's only been a week, and we already have another sort of point of conversation that isn't the original point of conversation. You know,
Right.
it's
But yet I stand with that the dam breaking for, I think, that blew it all up is this.
oh
And
yeah, yeah,
I stand with that. And
yeah,
I take it and go, you're right. The conversation changes weekly. And what we'll be talking about next week, who knew we were going to be talking about Aunt Jemima
yeah,
at the
right,
earlier part of this, right?
yeah. That
And
literally,
that's kind of like
literally,
even
just
trying
like
to figure out what to talk about. It's like, well, it changes hourly.
yeah, it's
And but I think it's time to wrap this up, dude.
oh yeah, for sure. Because I have a meeting that I have to go to.
But listen, well, I'm gonna think about what other word I'm gonna throw that out
Yeah, think about the word,
and find out,
because
like, just like, I get that I'm not a marketing master. I would not disagree with you,
yeah. Well, I
but
think that a lot of people get
and it's not
frustrated.
gonna change. It's already in the ethos.
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna go, well, let's change the word.
yeah. I think
I'm
it's
just like,
because you know how like you come up with like a title, and like
Yeah.
it took forever to come up with the title, and then you finally found out one, and then somebody comes and says, well, that's a little edgy. Why don't you just come up with a different title? And you're like, I spent 3 months trying to come up with this freaking title. How dare you? Come out of nowhere and then not give me a title to use. That's better.
Well, but just know that feedback,
yeah,
being attached to something, like, do you want feedback or no? Like, look, I didn't ask you for your feedback. This is what we're going with. We don't care if you don't like it. This is why we decided on it. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they'll say to you when you're going in to pitch for a show or whatever, don't get attached. Don't get attached to this.
Yeah.
Because look at the long term, blah, blah, blah. So that's you're not wrong about that. And if I offer, like, I'm not sure about that, it's part of the conversation to go, I see the not just knee-jerk reaction, but the sarcasm. In effect, like it's the ineffective sentiment that I feel.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, that's happening. It's like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm like, is it fine?
Oh yeah.
Is it? And it's like, okay. So then you just, it's okay. It'll take longer and you're losing people. And if that's okay, people who wanted to stand, who are going by, I'm like, okay. And that's a reality. Look, when something's hot and fiery, everybody's on it. And then look, 9/11, did we all care about 9/11 24/7 of our lives? No. You know what? The people who lost their loved ones in 9/11, they did that. They had to live in that place.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual. But the landscape has shifted, and police departments will change. They will change.
Yeah, they will eventually, and I think it's just sort of being under a lens that allows for positive changes.
Right, and I'm wanting to be more I want to be strong, but I want to be like poignantly not just a trigger word. I want to be. Yeah, that's at least my thought on it, and for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. I think that, so far, whoever's come up with these names are really doing good, because they're sparking conversations, and so to even have these, to even consider it. And so whoever's their marketing person, I mean, like, they're shooting gold right now. Like it's well,
and that's where we're not in 100% agreement on some of it. So
it's effective.
It's getting a conversation going.
It's effective. So with that, we'll just call it a wrap. Number 2 in the books, and
we have it.
And yeah, we'll follow up, and we'll go back from there next week.
Cool, Stephen. Thanks so much, and thanks everybody for listening.
Oh yeah.
And we're appreciative if you're paying attention. If you've gotten along with us so far, it'll be interesting what you think. But we both came into this with sincere hearts of the conversation, and
true
it's
passion.
been interesting.
True
passion, and we both share
passion
that.
For the people.
And you know what? That at the end of the day is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
Is we want to be. We're passion for the people.
Because at the end of the day, we pay taxes. Yep.
Okay.
And so have a good one. Be safe.
Take
and
care,
I will touch
everybody.
bases with you next week.
Okay.